Hey, folks, it's me, Andrew Austin of the FAR podcast, associated with the Freedom and Reason blog. I'm on the faculty of Democracy and Justice Studies at the University of Wisconsin Green Bay. Seems that I'm getting an encoding overload statement, so I'm not sure how this is working out, but uh, that's not my only issue with technology today. This is episode 18. I don't have a slide for it. I don't even have a title for this. I wanted to jump on real quick because of something that just happened. On May 15th, I shared a cartoon on Facebook, and I'll show you what that looks like. This was published in 1962. I think it's certainly foreign. And yeah, by the way, I'm just feigning ignorance. Uh, it doesn't matter. Uh, but at least the caption said it was from 1962, and it predicts the future in 2022. And I was born in 1962, so that's interesting to me. Uh, I'm always fascinated by uh, images from my childhood that show some future world. You know, this is what it's like to live on Mars. This is what it'll be like to live on the moon. We'll have flying cars. And in fact, when I was a kid, given where we were supposed to be by this time, um, one could be really disappointed. But none of that really matters. When I saw this, I shared it because it's funny. I said this is a germaphobe's wet dream. That was my joke, right? So, here the clearly that's not what this cartoon is about. This image is about something else. It's about the way that we'll get around in the future. So you have these people in their little carts with bubbles. But I thought, hey, one could imagine that would be the future for people who are terrified about coming in contact with human beings as disease vectors, right? This is the way we're being told that we have to think about other human beings, right? And there was this science fiction story when I was a kid that I read about Earthlings going to another planet. This planet was a planet of germaphobes who had never had human. Well, they weren't humans, but they looked like humans. But anyway, they were aliens, and not from their perspective, of course. The Earthlings were aliens. This other race of people on another planet never had physical contact with one another because they were terrified of coming, in contact with viruses. In fact, the reproduction, was artificial insemination. They didn't even have sex, and so when the Earthlings showed up, this is the 1960s, so you can imagine them swashbuckling cowboy types, and they're wanting to touch everything, and so it was kind of a funny story. And but it always stuck with me. I thought, well, man, that's a weird world to live in. And so then when I saw this popped up the other day, and then we're in the middle of this COVID-19 crisis. I thought, well, I'm going to share this. This would be great. And I said, this is a germaphobe's wet dream. I didn't think anything else about it. It was just a quick joke. And then today, I got this notice. This is on Facebook, right? And, Zuckerberg this guy is authoritarian to the hilt. And so I get this notice. It says false information found in your post. This is a cartoon. I was making a joke about it. I just you have to think about how incredibly silly this is. Independent fact checkers at Mafindo say information, or Mafindo, whatever it is, say information in your post is false. To stop the spread of false news. Notice they don't say fake news because that's Trump's. I don't know if he has if he has it registered. Anyway, so we've added a notice to your post. Thank you very much. You can check out additional reporting from independent fact checkers who investigate reports of false information across Facebook. Okay. So these Facebook checkers, they partner with Facebook. They're signatories of the International Fact Checking Network, and they follow their code of principles. And then you can also see how Facebook works with independent fact checkers to stop the spread of fake news. They say false news. I like fake news. It just sounds better. It's fake news. Like this is news. Okay, it's not. anyway, watch the video in the help center. I don't know. So you should do something outrageous so that you can get this warning, and then you can watch the video in the help center, and then you can tell me what it's about because I'm not going to watch it. So here's the fact check. Actually, there's two things that are fact checked here with this cartoon. It's false. Okay, here's what's false. It does not specifically mention the year 2022. It wouldn't matter if it was 1999 or 2050. What bearing does that have on anything? Um, so that's pretty goofy. If, if you think about it. Oh my God, that's goofy. All right, okay, so it doesn't say anything about 2022. Also, and I guess this is the most important part, the correct context is referring to traffic congestion, which is obviously, if you look at the image, they failed miserably at trying to solve the problem of traffic congestion because that looks way worse. That just looks chaotic. I mean, you can get, all you do is when, human cars take up a lot of space, and so you have these traffic congestion with all of these cars. So you just shrink the amount of space that the person is in, and then you can just have more people out on the street. Doesn't solve the whatever. I'm taking it as seriously as they're taking it, which I shouldn't at all because it isn't serious. It was just a joke. So anyway, it says that the correct context, get this, is referring to traffic congestions, not to a COVID-19 type situation. Now, who would have thought? Well, first of all, it obviously couldn't be referring to COVID-19 because it's 1962. Apparently, it says it's not referring to 2022. So, I by the way, the reason I was saying, feigning ignorance, I haven't even looked closely at the language or anything. It's not something that's easy to see. It's just an image that I put up on my Facebook. I'm really more interested in the people in the little plastic bubbles. They actually look like little, those when you're going out of the grocery store, and I'm 58, but I still get really excited about these, and you can like pop in like 50 cents and you can get like one of those little plastic bubbles and it has some figurine in it or some other sorts of thing. That's what they look like, right? Cute. Or kind of a little reminiscent of, although I always thought that Dick Tracy and his comrades were flying around in levitating trash cans. I don't know, but that's this is the way. Geez. So who who would think that a publication in 1962 would correctly predict COVID-19, and moreover that this would be their solution to it? That was the whole joke. Right? It makes no sense at all. All right, so or a COVID-19 like situation. Again, nobody would look at this picture and say that was what the intent of the picture was. This is how we'll deal with germs. It's an interpretation that occurs because of the context you're in. And so what this shows is how totally stupid the fact checkers are. Totally stupid. Zuckerberg pays people. I guess he's paying them. They're independent fact checkers. I mean, were they doing this for free? They'd say, hey, Mark, let us get rid of the fake news problem you have. Pay us this amount of money and we'll, scour the Facebook pages and we'll find fake news. I guess they're trying to earn their keep or something. So they come across, it's like, oh, wait a second, let's check this out. Like they're like Snopes, right? A couple of folklorists in their basement. I can't believe people fact check that. When people throw Snopes at me, I'm like, are you kidding me? Seriously? It's just so ridiculous. And so they're like, oh, looky here. But it's not just one false thing about this one. There's two false things. Oh my God, it mentions a year that isn't even mentioned. Like that fucking matters. And the correct context is referring to traffic congestion, not a COVID-19 like situation. Like that fucking matters. The whole point was repurposing this. I guess it's a magazine cover or a comic book cover, repurposing it to make a joke. A joke that was particularly meaningful to me because of a story I read when I was a kid that predicted. Can you imagine that? That actually predicted that in the future people would be in these sealed environments so they didn't have to be around other human beings because they viewed them as disease vectors. Now, I haven't been able to find. I read that one as a kid. Swear to God, we had this at the Rose Department Store in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. We had these bargain bins where you could buy these. They were sort of like the cutout bin at a record store. They were just paperbacks. I used to get the Tarzan and Conan. I remember this story called The Crimson Capsule. I mean, those Edgar Rice Burroughs stuff, whatever. And I used to, they were like, I don't know what they would be today, but in the late 1960s, early 70s, they were practically nothing. And it was one of those books that I bought, and I'd buy these books and read them. I was a voracious reader as a kid. I love science fiction, and these were cheesy, schlocky kind of novels, but but a lot of them had pretty good. They operated on a pretty good premise, uh, and um, and I haven't been able to find that title. I actually spent some time the other night, even before, even before I saw this actually, because this is on my mind. I wanted to actually do a blog or a podcast and talk about this story. I can't even remember the name of it now. In fact, if any of you out there know what I'm talking about, let me know. It would be great. I'd really appreciate it. Um, and I went out, and I got, like Wikipedia has this list of, science fiction titles, and I went and just looked at them and where I could, the ones that, actually had an entry. And finally, I just gave up. I said, I don't have time for this. I can't remember what this damn story was or what it was called. I just remember what the premise was. And I remember this in particular one scene where this, the captain of the vessel spaceship, was trying to interact, and you can imagine this in a movie. She was probably pretty good looking, otherworldly being, and he was trying to almost like make moves on her. I don't know whether how subtle it was. In my imagination, I could just see it, and I'm kind of an old soul, so it's probably inappropriate the things I was thinking about as young as I was. But there you go. And he was like making moves on her, and she's like, I can't. And it might have been, it's like, the prime directive in Star Trek. So Captain Kirk would, you're not supposed to interact with the other beings, but he would wind up doing it. And often it was for the, maybe always was for the better, greater good. Like, he helped people become liberated from their own oppressive culture. Even though you're culturally relativist, you're supposed to respect different cultures. He couldn't help but intervene because the Federation was kind of an imperialist adventure. By the way, and I'm not judging that in a negative way. I think in many ways the Federation liberated a lot of people who were oppressed by their own cultures. So I'm actually quite favorable to that whole thing. Not to mention that the Federation apparently was a socialistic endeavor in which profit making and exploitation of labor was no longer necessary because the world was so technologically advanced. It eliminated, once you've eliminated necessary labor, you can't carry on with capitalism, and so you had a whole different thing. But in any case, it was kind of like that. So in my mind, the character of this book was like a Captain Kirk. Was always trying to fuck everything, and um, you know, green, purple, whatever, it didn't matter. And so that's what he was trying to accomplish. That maybe that wasn't even in the story, but that's where my imagination went. And then so I put this up. Want to have some fun with it? What does Facebook do? Well, there you go. That's Facebook. It's crazy, and every time Facebook does something like this to me, I like download all of my information because I sometimes plan on leaving, and 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 then I don't. And when I looked at this, I was like, oh, what's this? I was pissed off. I was like, what, do they sent me something? False information found in your post. Okay, it's time to download all of my information and leave Facebook again, or at least think about it, which I never do. Because hey, particularly now you're stuck at home. How else are you gonna like interact with people if you don't have some virtual way of doing it? And then I looked at this and I said, this is so fucking silly. What's the point of leaving over this? I mean, it's like this whole thing is just so out of hand. But one thing it does show, and I just want to make this point as I leave you today. Everybody talks about China, which is the totalitarian society, without question, the way in which they censor information, they control the social media platforms. You can't say this, you can't say that, they'll take it down, etc. And it's like, boy, thank God that we live in a free society in which this doesn't happen. The reality is that we live in a society that is dominated by the corporate state. And there is fundamentally no difference with respect to how information is transmitted, expression, free speech, all these things. There's really no difference between the Chinese Communist Party and their approach and the approach of the corporate state, which tells you why the globalists, right, the transnationalists, the people who are dismantling the Westphalian system, dismantling the nation state, right, those who are denationalizing the world and creating actually the plan apparently is to do away with liberty, do away with democracy, and relegate us to some advanced feudalistic condition. Reduce us to serfdom. It's why those, the globalist Wall Street types have become intertwined with the goals of the Chinese Communist Party. And you can see it in the way that our institutions now are converging. We're seeing the convergence. So when you see all these people walking around with masks, you say, oh, where have I seen that before? When you see people being commanded by the government to stay in their homes and they don't resist, where have you seen that before? When you see the corporate state managing your information and censoring you, deciding what you can say, how you can say it. Where have I seen that before? When I see groups of youth mobbing intellectuals and hurling slogans at them, shouting them down with their big character posters. Where have you seen that before? And so, while this is a silly thing that happened on Facebook, there's actually something very terrifying that's beneath it. And it's something that we have to get a handle on now, because the further this goes on, the more we will lose our ability to be able to object to it. And you can already see that people are comfortable with this. And I see too many people who claim to be for human rights, people on the left who claim to be for working people, who are actually calling for this kind of suppression of information and the oppression of citizens. This is Andrew Austin, the FAR Podcast. I hope you have a great rest of the day. See ya.